And the prayer will be led by Mr. Aslan MA from the Ministry of Religion Affairs, Republic of Indonesia. Mr. Aslan, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Untuk mendapatkan keberkahan rangkaian acara ini, marilah kita berdoa menurut keyakinan kita masing-masing. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma ya Allah, Tuhan yang Maha Agung, kami agungkan asma-Mu seraya memohon dan mengharap ridho-Mu. Pada hari ini kami menyelenggarakan seminar internasional dalam rangka memperingati Hari Pers Nasional. Kiranya ya Allah, Engkau berikan kelancaran kegiatan kami ini. Ya Allah, Tuhan yang Maha Pengasih lagi Maha Penyayang, berikanlah kesehatan, kekuatan, dan keselamatan kepada kami, agar sejatinya kami dapat melaksanakan fungsi kami sebagai juru informasi yang akurat dan terpercaya. Ya Allah, berikanlah pintu-pintu kebaikan, bukakanlah pintu-pintu rezeki, pintu-pintu keselamatan, pintu-pintu kesuksesan kepada kami semua. Semoga kami dapat terus menghidupkan dan menumbuh kembangkan media pers yang handal demi menegakkan kebenaran dan keadilan sosial di tengah-tengah bangsa Indonesia khususnya dan dunia global umumnya. Ya Allah, Tuhan yang Maha Pengampun, ampunkanlah segala dosa dan kesalahan kami. Ampunkanlah dosa dan kesalahan kedua orang tua kami, dosa dan kesalahan para pemimpin kami. Ampunkanlah dosa-dosa kami di masa yang akan datang. Allahumma taqabbal minna du'aana fa innaka antas sami'ul alim wa tub alaina fa innaka antat tawwabur rahim. Allahumma ja'al jam'ana hadha jam'an marhuma wa tafarruqana min ba'dihi tafarruqan ma'suma. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aslan. The distinguished participants that join with us via offline and online or Zoom meeting, being the host of this seminar, Mr. Atal S. Depari, as the President of Confederation of Asian Journalists, is happy to present the opening speech. Mr. Atal S. Depari, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Balam berkicau di pokok akasia, tengok di Tasik berenang angsa. Selamat datang Ismawi Malaysia, mari hidupkan perpaduan bangsa. Ini puisi order by Malaysian. segar badan meminum jamu. Jamu sehat memaknai usia. Di kota Medan kita bertemu, kota bersejarah, pers Indonesia. Ini sesuai dengan tema. Sungguh cepat larinya rubah, melesat lewat pematang sawah. Teknologi media maju berubah, pers merdeka, demokrasi bermarwah. Baru pidato ya. Pidatonya by text. Oh, oke, iya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Yang terhormat Bapak Menteri Komunikasi dan Informatika Republik Indonesia yang diwakili oleh Dirjen Informasi Komunikasi Publik Bapak Usman Kansong lagi dalam perjalanan. Ibu Helena Rea, Head of Project dari BBC Media Action. Oke. Ibu Pravita Kusuma Ningtyas, Senior Project Officer. Rekan-rekan wartawan dan hadirin sekalian. Semangat pagi. Selamat datang di seminar internasional yang luar biasa ini. Seminar yang bertajuk Media Massa yang Berkelanjutan dalam Tantangan Digitalisasi Platform Global. Ini nantinya akan membahas mengenai disrupsi yang dihadapi oleh media. Kegiatan ini merupakan bentuk kolaborasi yang melibatkan Confederation of Asian Journalists, CAG, PWI dan BBC Media Action. Perkenankan saya hadir di depan forum ini tidak hanya sebagai Ketua Umum PWI tetapi juga sebagai Presiden CAG. Yang pada Oktober 2022 lalu di Bali, saya selaku Ketua Umum PWI menjadi Presiden CAG berdasarkan giliran di antara organisasi wartawan di seluruh negara anggota ASEAN kecuali Brunei. Saya akan mengemban sebagai Presiden CAG hingga tahun 2024 mendatang. Hadirin yang saya hormati, seperti kita ketahui adalah suatu keniscayaan bahwa Indonesia terintegrasi dalam landscape digitalisasi global. Kita secara fair mesti mengakui Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Alibaba, Twitter, dan lain-lain telah memberikan banyak manfaat pada kehidupan sosial dan ekonomi. Pengembangan ilmu, pengetahuan, dan teknologi, kebebasan berekspresi, ekonomi kreatif, dan bahkan proses berdemokrasi. Namun, disrupsi yang mereka timbulkan juga sesuatu yang nyata dan dapat dirasakan di hampir semua bidang kehidupan. Tidak ada sektor yang menghindar dari transformasi digital. Sektor media dan profesi wartawan termasuk yang mesti mempersiapkan diri untuk menerima kebaikan sekaligus mengantisipasi keburukannya. Bagi para pengelola media dimanapun saat ini semakin sulit menghindari integrasi ke dalam ekosistem, disrupsi konten dan pengguna dan periklanan yang dikendalikan platform digital global. Persinggungan jurnalisme dengan teknologi menunjang disrupsi konten, penambangan dan data dan layanan periklanan yang dioperasikan platform digital sepertinya hanya soal waktu dan intensitas. Semua media massa akan mengalaminya, tetapi terkecuali media ternama dunia seperti The New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, Sydney Morning Herald, The Sun, The Finance Times, Der Spiegel, dan lain-lain. Termasuk di Indonesia, sebut saja seperti Kompas, Metro TV, Jawa Post, dan masih banyak lagi. Hadirin yang saya hormati, teknologi digital menghadirkan kemungkinan-kemungkinan baru yang menggiurkan untuk memproduksi konten, menciptakan interaksi, dan menjangkau halayak secara lebih intens. Dalam perkembangannya, memang banyak pengelola media yang kecewa terhadap perilaku platform digital dan berpikir untuk meninggalkannya. Namun sangat sedikit yang benar-benar melakukannya. Sebagian besar lainnya seperti tidak bisa meninggalkannya. Meskipun demikian, penting untuk sungguh-sungguh dipikirkan bagaimana agar penerbit atau pengelola media tidak sepenuhnya tergantung pada platform digital. Penerbit semestinya tidak hanya mengandalkan kerjasama dengan platform digital dalam mendistribusikan konten, meraih pendapatan, dan mengelola data pengguna. Saat penerbit harus senantiasa memiliki opsi lain di luar kolaborasi dengan platform digital untuk ketiga hal tersebut di atas. Kemandirian penerbitan di hadapan platform digital ini sangat fundamental sifatnya untuk keberlanjutan hidup media. Sejauh ini platform digital tampaknya masih memiliki kepedulian terhadap kualitas jurnalisme dan demokratisasi arus informasi. Namun perlu ditegaskan bahwa motif utama di balik uluran tangan platform digital ke kalangan penerbit sesungguhnya bukan di situ. Pada galibnya platform digital adalah kekuatan bisnis yang orientasi utamanya adalah peraihan keuntungan ekonomi semaksimal mungkin untuk diri mereka sendiri. Platform digital akan mereka lakukan dengan memanfaatkan jerih payah penerbit dan pengelola media, termasuk memanfaatkan konten jaringan dan kekuatan merek pada penerbitan media. Lebih dari itu, fakta-fakta menunjukkan kerjasama penerbit dengan platform digital adalah bentuk hubungan yang cenderung berat sebelah. Bahkan kalau tidak mau disebut sama sekali tidak ada kerjasama yang win-win. Platform digital lebih banyak mengendalikan, penerbit lebih banyak dikendalikan. Platform digital dapat secara tiba-tiba mengubah sistem algoritma dengan dampak yang serius terhadap distribusi konten dan mode konten berbayar penerbit tanpa memberitahukannya terlebih dahulu. Platform digital dapat memaksakan bentuk kerjasama yang cenderung merugikan penerbit secara sepihak. Selain itu, tidak ada transparansi tentang nilai iklan dan data pengguna terkait dengan konten penerbit yang dimanfaatkan platform digital yang semestinya menguntungkan kedua belah pihak. Hadirin yang saya hormati, di forum seminar ini kita diskusikan bersama bagaimana jalan keluar dari ketimpangan ini. Kami berharap ada jalan keluar. Ada solusi terkait kerjasama bisnis yang win-win antara platform digital dengan penerbit. Di sini juga hadir narasumber seperti Prof. Rod Sims, ada di depan, guru besar di bidang kebijakan publik dari Australia National University. Bapak Nelson Yap, anggota Dewan Pers Australia. Dr. Agus Sudibyo, inisiator Publisher Right Indonesia, dan Dahlan Dahi, CEO Tribun News. Mereka akan menyampaikan pemikiran, gagasan, dan belajar dari negara lain mengenai publisher right. Tentu, Dari mereka kita juga bisa belajar dan bertukar ide mengenai bentuk kerjasama bisnis yang win-win antara platform digital dengan penerbit. Juga hadir di pagi hari ini teman-teman wartawan Malaysia yang tergabung dalam ISWAMI, Ikatan Setia Kawan Wartawan Malaysia Indonesia, yang dipimpin langsung oleh Datuk Mukhtar. Berdiri. Datuk Mukhtar Hussein, sahabat kita. Kehadiran rombongan wartawan Malaysia menghadiri acara ini memberi bobot mengenai kebersamaan ASEAN, khususnya wartawan dan pengelola media dalam menghadapi disrupsi teknologi. Mari kita memanfaatkan momentum seminar ini untuk kita bertukar informasi dan belajar dari para ahli di bidangnya. Juga memanfaatkan semangat Hari Pers Nasional 2023 yang kali ini mengambil tema Pers Bebas, Demokrasi Bermartabat. Seperti diketahui, tahun 2023 ini Indonesia memasuki tahun politik. Pers juga menjadi bagian dari persaingan politik yang pemilu presiden dan pemilu legislatif yang akan berlangsung serentak pada tahun 2024 mendatang. Tentu kita berharap pers Indonesia tetap bebas, tetap menjaga independensinya di tengah hiruk pikuk para buzzer politik, dan kebebasan pers di Indonesia masih tetap terjaga dalam koridor kode etik jurnalistik sehingga bisa ikut mewarnai demokrasi yang bermartabat. Hadirin yang saya hormati, dalam kesempatan ini perkenankan kami mengucapkan terima kasih kepada BBC Media Action yang diwakili oleh Ibu Helena yang mendukung kegiatan yang merupakan kolaborasi antara CAG, PWI dan BBC Media Action. Kami sangat senang dapat menyambut para Anda semua dalam seminar ini. Kami berharap bahwa seminar ini akan banyak menghasilkan buah pemikiran, terobosan, gagasan, dan ide-ide besar yang bisa menjadi inspirasi bagi kita semua dalam menjaga kelangsungan media di tengah tantangan disrupsi digital. Semoga Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala memberikan rahmatnya kepada kita semua. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Baik, selanjutnya kami persilakan untuk Bapak Ibu atau Bapak Ibu beserta peserta ya. Baik, baik kami persilakan untuk berfoto bersama Bapak Atal dan Bapak-bapak lainnya untuk berdiri. Kita akan berfoto bersama. We will do the photo group session. Peserta tetap di sini tapi berdiri kali ya Bu ya. Kami persilakan untuk berdiri. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand up because we would like to do the photo group session. Thank you. Bapak Ibu mohon tetap berdiri tapi menghadap ke belakang. Di balik, ngadapnya di balik Bapak Ibu. Supaya dampak backdropnya. meninggalkan tempat karena masih ada acara lain yang harus dihadiri oleh Pak Atal. Kami ucapkan terima kasih atas kehadirannya dan sampai ketemu lagi di acara yang berikutnya. Bapak Ibu yang berbahagia, kita akan langsung saja masuk ke acara utama yaitu panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are proceeding to our main agenda. It is the panel discussion. And in this session, we are inviting for distinguished speakers. They are Mr. Professor Rod Sims from Crawford School of Public Policy, the Australian National University. Mr. Agus Sudibyo, the initiator Indonesian Publishers' Right Regulation. Mr. Nelson Yap, member of Australian Press Council Board, member Local and Independent News Australia, and Mr. Dahlan Dahi, the CEO of Tribun Network. And this session will be led by our beautiful moderator, Mrs. Cherstina Chelsea Chan, the academician Media Law Studies, as well as the assistant to Secretary General of Confederation of Asian Journalists. And we are saying that all the speakers and moderators are in front of us. And ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big welcome to our speakers and moderator. So, Mr. Chelsea, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Femi. Good morning to all of you, and good morning to distinguished speakers around me. And allow me to start the session with the information about the list of speakers, of course. As you may know that the initiate speakers, according to the program, before the panel start, it should be the speech from representative of Minister of Information and Communication, in this case, Director General of Information and Public Communication, Mr. Usman Kansong. But we just received news from his staff that he actually on his way to this venue from the University of North Sumatra. So I ask for your kindness that we still can start our panel right now, and when Mr. Usman Kansong arrive, then we will give him the floor for his speech representing as representative of the minister. Will that be okay for you for the floor? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I would like to check with our colleague from the IT team to make sure whether Professor Rod Sims already in the Zoom meeting. Does he already, Mr. Sam? Not yet. Okay, no problem. We already informed him that the session will start by 9:30 actually. So it's understandable that maybe he's still in his position to start to join the Zoom meeting, because his current position right now is in New Zealand, specifically in Auckland. So the time zone is very different from Jakarta and Medan time. So we're gonna start with Mr. Nelson Yap, member of the Australian Press Council, but also the founder and board member of Local and Independent News, in this case Lina from Australia. And then we will invite Mr. Agus Sudibyo, Dr. Agus Sudibyo, the initiator of the Indonesian Publisher Right Regulation, which is already with us here. And last but not least, of course, our CEO Tribun Network, Mr. Dahlan Dahi, on my right side. So there will be a session for dialogue or discussion from the floor to the speakers in terms of clarification of their idea, or probably you want to share your point of view, we will start after the panel finish. So please join us until the end of the seminar, and please be in the good spirit when we join this session. So allow me to inform you in terms of the topic, why we choose the topic digital disruption and sustainable media ecosystem governance. For sometimes the Indonesian publishers in the process of having this process to get in touch with the international digital platform to make sure that the product, the quality of their journalism product can be used in a proper and appropriate manner. In terms of business side, there is a problem facing by the publishers in Indonesia, especially because Indonesia have so much, by population, it's more than Australia. Nelson said about that yesterday. And the international digital platform will be very, very eager to keep the market in Indonesia alive, to make sure that the publishers can cooperate with them. But of course, we're gonna hear directly from the speaker's point of view and their experience directly. So just to start with, allow me to invite Mr. Nelson Yap for your session. Each speakers will have 15 minutes, so please make use of the time available. Thank you. Let's give an applause for Mr. Nelson Yap. Thank you. Oh, you may. You sure? Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, friends and colleagues. My name's Nelson Yap. I'm the publisher of Australian Property Journal. I'm also co-chair and co-founder of the Public Interest Publishers Alliance and a board member of the Australian Press... not board member, just a member of the Australian Press Council and a board member of the Local and Independent News Association. So I'm here today to share the experiences of what it's like for a publisher to negotiate and benefit from the News Bargaining Code in Australia. Oh. Do I press that button? Yes. Okay, excellent. So the Publishers Alliance, I'll call them PIPA, we were formed in 2021. When the Australian government announced that the News Bargaining Code would be introduced earlier that year, it was embraced by all the publishers in Australia because we thought finally we're going to get some sort of revenue or some sort of recognition for all the work that we've done. But after the code was shortly, introduced in Australia, we quickly noticed that independent and small publishers were ignored by the digital platforms. So before the code was, passed by Parliament, they had done deals with the major media companies, which were News Limited, 7 West Media, 9, the ABC, and a select number of medium-sized publishers. But they didn't do any deals with the independent publishers or the smaller ones. In fact, before the code was introduced in Australia, Facebook, we call it unfriended, but they blocked all the news websites and government websites in Australia. At the time, they said it was an accident, but we have seen since then that it wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate strategy to bully the Australian government so they wouldn't designate Facebook under the code. Now, it'll be interesting because we've got 26 million people. Indonesia has much more than us, so I don't know whether Facebook will do the same thing and threaten to ban all the websites in Indonesia. Because the last time Facebook had their annual meeting, I think, or their quarterly meeting, they revealed to their investors that they had lost 500,000 users, and we saw 25% wiped out from their market value. So they lost $200 billion just by losing 500,000 users. Now imagine if they lost 196 or 98 million users in Indonesia. I think the company would lose much more than 200 billion. Anyway, that's just my thought. But so the code allowed the Australian Communications and Media Authority to establish a process where publishers could join and basically be found to be eligible news businesses. Now, my publication and over 30 odd publications in Australia were recognised as a public interest publisher by ACMA, which is the Australian Media and Communications Authority. But despite being recognised, we still couldn't get the digital tech platforms to talk to us. They ignored all our emails and all our phone calls, all kinds of communication, because they weren't designated under the code. So thanks to Rod Sims, who will be presenting later today, it was under his leadership and his vision that the ACCC allowed an exemption under the anti-competition and laws to allow the publishers to negotiate collectively with the tech giants. So, and also the ACCC had concluded a report that found that there was a power imbalance between the digital platforms and the small independent publishers, as you expect. You know, we're talking about Google, which is a $1.3 trillion company, and a small independent publisher in Australia. You know, you can see that you're fighting a titan. So, and just I think you know, Australia, we say it's like, you know, battle of David versus Goliath. So it is truly that case. So, okay, so I've already spoken about that. So yes, on the advice of the ACCC, we formed a collective bargaining group, and we were very fortunate to be represented by Emma McDonald, who was supposed to speak here today. Yes, through her role as Andrew Forrest's philanthropic Minderoo Foundation. So we were very fortunate there. And so to give a view, the only other collective bargaining group at the time was the Country Press Australia, which represented all the rural and regional local community publishers. But we were the first of its kind, PIPA, because of our diverse group of small, medium, independent publishers. As you can see, we represented sort of across the spectrum of all the different publishing and magazines in Australia. And I say this to the ministers or whoever I meet, that a lot of our publishers cover stories that are often neglected by the large media companies. So, and they're also, our publishers, some of them are in small communities with only 5,000, 15,000 community people. So, you know, if without our publishers, they would have no way to get news. But more importantly, though, I think as we see now the rise of fake news and misinformation, we as journalists and publishers, not just in Australia, but Indonesia and around the world, we are gatekeepers and we're fighting against the fake news. You know, I didn't put this in because I did the research after, but a joint New York University report found that between August 2020 and January 2021, misinformation posts by accounts on Facebook had 6 times more interactions than posts by trustworthy news sources. So therefore, critics were saying that, experts said that the report supports the view that Facebook rewards accounts that put out misinformation over publishers like us who put out trustworthy information. So that's a list, I won't read it out, but that's our list of publishers in our group of 24, as I said. So in August 2022, almost a year later, our 24 publishers were lucky to secure a deal or funding from Google, but Facebook continues to refuse to negotiate with us. And along with us, Facebook has also refused to negotiate with Australia's largest multicultural broadcaster, SBS. So they publish all the Croatian, Greek, everything, but Facebook refuses to do a deal with them. And Facebook also refuses to do a deal with The Conversation, which is a large academic and publication. But having said that, so we were very fortunate, but after us, to the best of our knowledge, no other publishers have done a deal since then with Google or Facebook. And so in that sort of, I'll just jump to the government in Australia conducted a review of the code 1 year after to see what impact it has had. But the government decided, despite our lobbying, the government decided that they would not designate Facebook under the code because it requires designation for the negotiation to be mandatory. So the negotiation in Australia right now is voluntary between the digital platforms and the publishers. So in a sense, Facebook did not face any consequences for blocking news in Australia. It has successfully bullied the Australian government, which is very disappointing, into not doing anything. And therefore, as I said, Facebook continues to extract billions of dollars in advertising revenue from the Australian market without remunerating most of the independent publishers. Okay, so why the code is important, our experience. So as I said, it's all up there, you can read, but in Australia we had between 2019 and 2022, 265 newsrooms were closed across the country. Now that's, for a country of 26 million people, that is a lot of newsrooms. And in the last 15 years, we've lost 60,000 jobs in our industry. That's a lot of journalism, a lot of journalists, editors, sub-editors, what have you, anyone working in our industry. So, in a sense, this code, when the Australian government introduced it, was a very critical reform because it has been so long, it has been 15 years of the digital platforms having a free ride of our news and benefiting from our news and making billions of dollars in digital advertising revenue and taking it away from us without giving us anything. We have to employ the journalists, we have to do all these stories, and they just benefit from it. So the code was important to address that disruption that we've experienced. So the lessons learned from us was PIPA's experience. That was my main role in PIPA as co-founder was, we call it herding cats. I'm not sure if you have the same terms in Indonesia or Asia, but it was interesting to try and find as many publishers as possible to join our group to negotiate because there are so many different publishers of different sizes, different expectations. So that was a challenge. But what I wanted to, from my meetings with a lot of the publishers and informing PIPA, was that, you know, initially we had 50 people, 50 publishers who looked at joining, but because of disagreements, some of them thought that they didn't need to, some of them thought they were too big to join a group, they can do it themselves. So for various different reasons, they decided that they wouldn't be part of it, so we ended up with 24. But these publishers still do not have a deal today. So my experience from this is that we are stronger together. Whilst some of us might be competitors, you know, at the end of the day, if we don't stick together, we are going against titans here. So if we don't stick together as publishers, we go in independently, we're not going to get anywhere. And look, and of course we engage with all the members of parliament, ministers and the government. But as I said, so lessons learned from PIPA, is that, and ultimately, of course, more importantly for newsrooms, is the financial security, because it creates a sustainable news business. But now I want to turn to also quickly the lessons learned from overseas. I'm sure you've all followed. We've now seen, in the US, in the United States and Brazil, the code basically has been killed off. In the US, it's sort of sitting there, but it's not going anywhere anymore. That's because the publishers in the United States were not able to come together. I guess because of their political system, they're very divided as well. But also, the US wanted to be perfect. They wanted their code to be perfect. And I say, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. So sometimes good enough is a good start, and we can work on progress and reform and make changes. Don't wait until we're trying to make it perfect before we pass the code. And then finally, of course, don't wait for things to happen, make them happen. I think, I'm a journalist, I'm an editor. This is not my job. I don't know how to lobby. I don't know how to do any of these things. I don't know how to bring together 50 people in one room and say, let's go and negotiate with Facebook and Google. But someone had to do it. So I thought, well, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? No one else. So that's why I started ringing the calls, cold calling all the publishers to try and get them on board. Okay. There's a delay. Oops. Oh no. So funding, that's just a quick slide. Yes, so now in Australia, where, as I said again, and Chelsea has mentioned, we are a small population. We have only got 26 million people, so our media companies are smaller than yours. But publishers, large and small, in Australia have benefited from the deals that have been done with Google and Facebook. These multi-year deals between 3 to 5 years and have brought in over $200 million to local news businesses in Australia. So, and we saw that with the Guardian newspaper. That investment that they secured from Google and Facebook has enabled them to expand their newsrooms by 40. I think it was actually 50 journalists, but I said 40 just to be safe. So the Guardian is just one example of many newsrooms in Australia that have benefited. So from our own experience, from our 24 publishers, as I said, we secured funding from Google. And to their credit, since we have made a deal with Google, we signed our deal with Google, they have recognized our value to their, they have recognized our value to their platform. And we've had a very positive working relationship with Google, which so it should be. And also we've received a lot of mentorship from Google and participated in a lot of training programs, particularly in digital disruption. We wanted to learn what's the best approach, how are we sort of reaching our new audiences. And at the end of the day, we also know that, Google has access to all the data analytics, so they can share that vision, that sort of data with us to help us navigate this digital disruption. But from my experience, an independent publisher and owner of Australian Property Journal, the funding from Google has allowed me, just in my example, to hire more journalists. I've also started an internship program with universities to train young journalism students. We've also expanded our public interest journalism news coverage. So we're doing a lot of stories about homelessness, social housing, climate change. So all these things. We've upgraded our digital infrastructure, launched new products, and we've also grown our traffic as well. And that's just in the first 6 months. So actually our first 6 months was February the 1st. So, and that's just in 6 months what we've achieved from Google funding. And we have all, as I said, publishers, large and small, secured multi-year deals. So imagine what multi-year deals can do for Indonesian publishers if we have achieved that in just 6 months. So my final thoughts are that, and we've seen this in the Treasury Review in Australia, is that Google and Facebook are just the start. We've got digital disruption, but digital disruption has now evolved into the social media disruption. Because as now, no doubt you've now noticed in Indonesia, that the millennials and the Gen Z news audiences, they turn to social media to get their news. So therefore, in Australia now, the government is considering expanding the code to include Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Microsoft, and the Apple News platform. And I think the Indonesian government, and particularly looking at the code, should consider expanding it to the social media platform as well, because that's where a lot of the people are getting their news. Research from Oxcom in 2022 found that 29% of teenagers are getting their news from Instagram. And I actually said Instagram twice. 28% are getting their news from TikTok and 28% from YouTube. I should have fixed that mistake. Sorry. And so now, but also the Reuters Institute at Oxford University found that a third of TikTokers now use TikTok for their daily news. Now, and YouGov Global Profiles did a research and found that 2 in 3 people in Indonesia and Vietnam, that's 67% of the population, yes, that's right, use social media as a source of news. That's the highest rate globally and higher than the global average of 46%. I think if you look closely, Australia, we are around, well, we're 33%. So you have an audience that's twice as engaged with social media when they get their news. And also, I suppose it makes sense because consumers aged between age 18 and 33 make up the majority of the audience that use social media for news. And again, I point out, Indonesia has the youngest median age in the world. You have people who are a lot younger than most countries. So, and we know that young people are the most engaged in social media. So, social media disruption is the next one. Google and Facebook are great, you know, to get the code started. They're great, but we also have to consider that in order to preserve journalism, and what we do is a public good, we are just as important as hospitals, roads, and all those things. We sometimes, I think, in the media don't sort of see ourselves doing public good, because I have to confess, a year ago, before I started doing this, I just saw myself as a journalist writing stories every day, you know, filing in your stories and then going home and thinking that's done, that's fine. But we don't value what we do sometimes, and I think then we can't, if we don't value what we do and if we don't see, sort of step back, then how can we go to government and say, you need to support us in this because we want to deal with Google and Facebook? What we do is important, particularly in the rise of fake news as well. So we are the gatekeepers against fake news. Without us, the government will have to contend with a lot of misinformation and fake news that's on social media. And that will destabilize, and it's not healthy for democracy. So what we do is healthy for democracy. And it is, we are a critical pillar in democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Nelson. Allow me to call you Pak, as we usually here in Indonesia, for respecting the male gentleman, whether it's married or unmarried yet. So please bear with me. So, Bapak dan Ibu, okay. Bapak dan Ibu, allow me to speak in bahasa a little bit, just a little bit. Bapak dan Ibu, untuk informasi bahwa penterjemahan dari bahasa Inggris ke bahasa Indonesia sebenarnya tersedia dalam caption di dalam ruang Zoom. Jadi jika membutuhkan bantuan penterjemahan tersebut, kami persilahkan untuk bisa mengakses dari device masing-masing di link Zoom yang disediakan oleh panitia atau di YouTube yang disediakan oleh panitia. So, back to English. Back to English. Another information from the committee out there that Mr. Usman Kansong, our Director General, is already on his way to this venue. But the traffic in Medan is unpredictable as we experience these 2 days in Medan. So please bear with me too for this, and also the speakers. But Mr. Usman Kansong committed to be with us later, soon. In the meeting room right now, we have Professor Rod Sims. Do we have Sam Oliver? Is he? Yes? Okay. Can you show him in our screen, please? Hi. Hello, Professor Rod. How are you? Okay. One moment. We haven't heard your audio yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear now?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you very much. So, Professor, just to inform you that we already opened the seminar by official opening. We just finished with that. And then we already invite Nelson Yap as the first speaker, because it's my apology if it's a bit of the structure of the speakers is a bit changing, because we understand that you are kindly agree to speak with us even though you are on holiday. So really appreciate your time right now. It's very valuable for us. And we can see you from our screen in front of us. So you are facing the seminar room right now with about 100 participants. And most of us agree that we can start and still using English as our language for the seminars. And it's being translated to Indonesian in the caption, which is you can also see from your screen in the Zoom meeting. But it's in Indonesian anyway. So you may start speaking in English as you, of course, your native language, and we gonna follow, and the participant will follow also with Indonesian from their devices here. So Professor Rod, let me introduce you that Professor Rod Sims agree with us to speak in this National Press Day conferences, and it's his second participation actually, because last year he spoke with us also in Kendari. He did it during his term as the president of the Australian Competition Authority. And this year, Professor Rod Sims will speak with us as his current academic role, Professor of Harvard School of Public Policy from the Australian National University. But he's currently in Auckland. So we appreciate your time, Professor. So as you may know that the topic of today is still related to the process and the effort from the Indonesian publishers to have the bargaining code and the publisher right to be established in Indonesia. In front of us, publisher owners and also academician join us, and the government official also with us. So we allow us to invite you for 15 minutes to share your thought about this. Thank you, Professor. Let us applaud him to encourage Professor. Thank you. So time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation to speak. Unfortunately, as you say, it did coincide with me being on holidays, and I have to say I'm not in Auckland. I'm very much to the north, the northern tip of New Zealand, so I hope the internet holds up through this discussion. I thought I'd make a few points and then happy to take questions later on. The first point is that what started the News Media Bargaining Code in Australia was a study done by the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. The law in Australia is such that when the government directs us to do an inquiry, that gives us powers to get information, compulsorily demand information, and it also requires us to make recommendations to the government, which we did. Now, the study was about digital platforms, media, advertising. We ended up making 23 recommendations, of which one was that there be a news media bargaining code. We did make other recommendations about providing funding to local journalism and a range of other things. So the news media bargaining code was not our only recommendation in relation to journalism, but it was I think our most important one. The reason we made the recommendation for a news media bargaining code was that we could see that, as the previous speaker said so very clearly and very well, the platforms use the content of media businesses to attract people onto their platform, either to answer Google searches or to be on the Facebook newsfeed. When the media companies asked for compensation for this, they were told no. And our view was that there was an imbalance in bargaining power, in the sense that Google and Facebook need media, but they don't need any particular media. They could, even if they had half the media, that would be enough for them. Whereas each of the media businesses did need to be on Google and Facebook. So it was an imbalance in the bargaining power to arrive at an appropriate payment for that content. Google and Facebook said there is no payment for content. The concern we had and the government had was that, again, as the previous speaker just said, journalism is fundamental for democracy. It is a vital ingredient of a well-performing democracy. We don't want the platforms to not make payment, otherwise journalism will decline significantly, and if journalism declines, then our societies will decline. So the logic for the News Media Bargaining Code was the imbalance in bargaining power and the importance of journalism. Now, the News Media Bargaining Code was a recommendation to government. It was accepted by government at the end of 2020. And the point I want to make here is it's nothing to do with competition law, even though it was the Australian Competition and Consumer Committee which recommended it, or Commission which recommended it. It is government legislation. So ultimately, in Indonesia, in other ASEAN countries, you need government legislation to make this work. Now, there's three components of that legislation which are fundamental. One is that there is a process of negotiation, but if negotiation does not yield an outcome within a certain period of time, then there is a process of arbitration. So it is a negotiate, arbitrate model. The reason that's important is Google and Facebook, you could require them to negotiate, but they'll still say, we won't pay you anything. Faced with the prospect that payment might be determined by an arbitrator, that encourages them to do a deal because they'd rather do a deal themselves than have it determined by an arbitrator. So it's very much a forcing device. Having arbitration there is a forcing device to even up the bargaining power and get a fair deal. The other component is that the legislation says that the legislation in Australia does not compel Google and Facebook to do any deals, but if they do a deal with any media company, then they must do a deal with all qualifying media companies. So one in, all in was the second component. And the third one was collective bargaining, that particularly the smaller players could get together and bargain as one. So negotiate, arbitrate, was fundamental. One in, all in. If you deal with one media company, you've got to deal with a lot. And thirdly, collective bargaining. Those are the three key ingredients of the code. If any legislation in any of your jurisdictions tries to deal with this, it needs to include all three of those components. Doesn't need much more. It just needs those three components. Now, the process, I won't describe it too much, but it is worth stating that when the government was attempting to introduce the legislation, and we had about a year of negotiating the legislation, it was the ACCC, which I was leading at the time, which drafted the legislation with the Commonwealth Treasury and the Commonwealth Department of Communications. Google said that if this legislation passes, we will leave Australia. We will no longer provide search results for Australia. So it was quite a threat. When they made that threat, Microsoft stepped in and said, well, if Google leave Australia, our search engine Bing can take over. There was a discussion between the chief executive of Microsoft and Australia's Prime Minister. So in a sense, and also there was a public reaction against Google for threatening the government in that way. Facebook, in turn, we woke up one day to find that Facebook had taken all media and other things off Facebook. So they not only took media off Facebook, they also took down sites that were there to provide help, bushfire warnings, health warnings, and again, they overstepped the mark and there was a huge public backlash against them, a whole lot of people saying they would no longer use Facebook anymore. So those threats backfired, but they did set off real negotiations between the Australian Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, and the chief executive of Alphabet, Google's parent, and the chief executive of Facebook. A number of changes were made which don't really matter. The one change that is worth explaining was that the Treasurer felt that the Google and Facebook were scared about being designated under the legislation. So the legislation sets up the framework, but to be covered by it, you've got to be designated by the Treasurer. The Treasurer said, well, if you go out and do deals with our media companies, we won't designate you. That caused Google and Facebook to immediately go out and do a lot of deals, whereas I thought, certainly, and others did as well, that deals would be done against the threat of arbitration. In the end, deals were done against the threat of designation. Now, it doesn't matter. The point is deals were done. So Google have now done deals with essentially all Australian media. There's a few companies that don't have deals, but it is disputed about whether they qualify or not. The companies that clearly qualify have all got deals, and that's very pleasing. So Google has done deals, I think, with just about everybody. The number of exceptions are exceptionally small and may not exist. Facebook did a deal with approximately, I think, media companies that employ about 85% of Australian journalists. As the previous speaker just said, they did not do a deal with Australia's multicultural broadcaster, the Special Broadcasting Service, or SBS. They did not do a deal with the joint venture between sort of media and academic, called The Conversation, as is just mentioned. But they did a deal with a lot of other companies. So the result of all that was that Google and Facebook are paying over $200 million per year to Australian media companies. The previous speaker mentioned some of the benefits of that. The Guardian increased its staff by about 50%. And various journalists have told me that once the code came in, there's never been a better time to be a journalist. That is, the demand for journalism services has gone up massively. So it's been very successful, a lot of money paid. Now, there's a couple of criticisms that have been made internationally about the code. One is that it just deals with, it just benefits the large players, not the small ones. That is simply not true. Google have done a deal with, as I say, just about everybody. Facebook with about 85% of the media landscape. But deals have been done with large and small players. In my experience, the smaller players got more money per journalist than the larger players. Now, that's not going to be always the case, but it's certainly largely the case. It's been a very successful process. It's now being followed in Canada, where the legislation is now being reviewed by the upper house of their parliament. I spoke to the lower house. It's now before the upper house. So I'm very confident that there'll be a news media bargaining code equivalent in Canada. I think there's a good chance there'll be one in the United Kingdom. They're due to pass their legislation next year. It's broader legislation, but once it's passed, it allows for a news media bargaining code. So they're the two most likely places. Obviously, I'm heartened by the fact that Indonesia is actively considering it, and I hope other countries in ASEAN will consider it. As the previous speaker said, the opportunity looks as if it's lost in the United States, although I'm going there late March, early April, and hoping that it can be revived, but we will see. The main lesson, I can only repeat what the previous speaker said, what made the code, what got the code into legislation, what made it so successful was the media worked together. All Australian media pretty well backed the code. Even newspapers to the right and to the left of the political spectrum, they joined together and lobbied the government to get the code, and with the code in place, then deals were successfully done. Now, those deals are in place for 3 to 5 years. There is provision under the legislation, which the previous speaker again said, for the code to be extended to other platforms. That would require further consideration. We have a new government in Canberra at the moment, and it's got a lot of priorities. I'm sure it will get round to this issue, but it's got a lot on at the moment, having just come to government with a whole range of problems confronting them. So I don't think we've heard the last of other platforms getting designated or threatened to be designated, and it may well be that action is taken against Facebook for not doing deals with the SBS and the Conversation. I think we're still fairly early stages with a government that's had other priorities. So look, I'll leave it there to stick within your timing, but happy to answer questions at an appropriate stage. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. We give you applause from here. So you don't mind to continue with us for another 20 minutes, perhaps?
Yes, I can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you very much. But to inform you that we already have our Director General of Information and Public Communication, Mr. Usman Kansong. Let's give applause to Mr. Kansong. Yes, he's here in terms of his role to representing the Minister of Information and Communication and Informatics. Pak Usman, we already start with 2 speakers, especially Nelson Yap from the Lina, the local and independent news publisher from Australia, and he spoke about the process and the success, and especially quite interesting, what happened after that. Yes, what happened after that is, I think it's very quote, yeah, to be quote here. And from Professor Rod Sims, you actually met him also in Kendari via Zoom, and he emphasized about the process of legislation, but also he talked about whether the three components, the negotiation and arbitration process, the legislation itself, and of course, how to encourage the media groups to be able to cooperate each other strongly, to have and to pass the regulation as needed, as initiated by the media community, in this case, Pak Agus Sudibyo and the network. So, Pak Usman Kansong, if you don't mind, we would like to invite you in this moment right now to speak about some of the progress that we already have at the House of the Minister. Time is yours, please. To inform you that we use the English, but you may speak in Bahasa. The translation is available at the caption of the Zoom meeting. Thank
Okay,
you.
I will speak in mixed languages.
Okay, the translator, please be informed that Mr. Usman Kansong will speak mix English and Indonesia, and especially maybe Medan language also. So be aware. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for this occasion, for this chance to speak on what is the progress of the legislation or regulation of the publisher right. Cominfo, the Ministry of Communication and Informatics, has just submitted the draft of a presidential decree on publisher right or negotiation code in terms of Australia, like Rod Sims said earlier. And we are waiting for the response of the president. We have to submit the draft. We call it, we ask from the president the initiative right to initiate to developing or to form the legislation. We have had draft, but after president give us the initiative right, we will discuss again. We will discuss more deeply about the substance of the publisher right. Let me inform you that there are two substance of the publisher right regulation. The first is that the platform must cooperate with the media in Indonesia in terms when the platform want to deliver the news in their platform from our media. They must cooperate. They must negotiate with our media. But the negotiate will be B2B business, business to business negotiation. And the second, we will have such a body, such a controlling body to watch, to control the, to see the negotiation between the platform and the media the body will mediate if there is a dispute, if there is a dispute between platform and the media. And it is okay also if the platform and the media use arbitrage mechanism via BANI. We have BANI here in Indonesia, Badan Arbitrase Nasional Indonesia. And we the regulation will give the right to press council to control, to watch, to see, to mediate the cooperation between platform and the media. Because the position of the government, we are not recommending to form new special body. So we will use the existing body, that is press council. I agree with Rod Sims that this legislation, this regulation needs the working together, the cooperation amongst the media. The media in Indonesia and the government should be united. Should be united. We don't want in government that there is a dispute or there is differences opinion between amongst the media in Indonesia. So we should unite here if we want to regulate the platform. And the position of the government here that we have press freedom here in Indonesia. So we will regulate the economic aspect, not the press or journalism aspect. That's the first. And the second, we regulate, we govern the platform, not regulate or govern the press. Yeah, because we have press freedom here. We off in HPN 9 February, in next 2 days, the president in his speech will respond the draft of regulation that we have just submitted to the president. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Usman Kansong, for your brief information on the update of the progress from the minister's side. Next, directly we invite Mr. Agus Sudibyo, Dr. Agus Sudibyo, to present his thought. Thank you. And next, after that, we will invite Pak Dahlan Dahi. Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. First, thank you for CIG, PWI, and PPC Media Action for invite me to join in these important meetings. And it's really nice to meet all of you, especially colleagues from other country in Southeast Asia region, especially from my friend from Malaysia, tepuk tangan. And also my friend from maybe Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines that join in this seminar. I would like to share the experience of Indonesia media community to the advocacy for news media bargaining codes, and then also I would like to share the idea for the need for inter-country media association caucus or alliance for together to the same advocacy. As we all know that the main problem in media industry now is the monopoly by the giant global digital platform. I don't know the exact situation in each country in ASEAN region, but if we refer to the context of Indonesia today, the monopoly of global digital platform company happen at least in 3 levels. First, around 80% of news distribution in Indonesia is controlled by Google and Facebook. This duopoly also grab around 75% digital advertising expenditure in Indonesia. And they also monopolize the processing and also utilization of user behavioral data. Even though they use publisher own news content in mining that user behavioral data, they refuse to share the data to publisher. If publisher need the user behavioral data, they still have to buy to Google and Facebook. Even everybody know that Facebook, Google mining user behavioral data use the content of publisher. I think it's not only Indonesia problem, it's a problem in every country. Also, I think in Australia also. So in in this context, I think 2 years ago, media community in Indonesia, Indonesian Press Council, Indonesian Media Association, Journalist Association together established what we call Indonesia Media Sustainability Task Force. Indonesia Media Sustainability Task Force. And this task force tried to initiate the drafting and the advocacy of Indonesia News Media Bargaining Codes, which refer to EU Publisher Right and the Australian News Media Bargaining Codes. But it's important to know that this code actually not designed as a hostile gesture against the global digital platform or to undermine their positive contribution. Rather, it is an initiative to create two-way value exchange or to realize the mutually beneficial relationship between news publisher and digital platform. And in the draft that submitted by task force to government, this bargaining codes set up the obligation of digital platform company to negotiate in good faith with Indonesia publisher regarding first, the economy value of publisher content that they use or monetize, and the second, fair and transparent profit sharing in digital advertising schemes involves both parties, and third, sharing of user data generated from the use of publisher own news content by digital platform company. The code also obligate the digital platform company to ensure that the news content they distribute and monetize is in accordance with the Indonesian press law and the journalistic code of ethics. And also to make sure, it's very important, I think Pak Dahlan will share the idea about it also, to make sure that their algorithm system is supporting the preservation of local value, diversity of perspective, and multiculturalism principle in Indonesia. So we also talk about how we govern the system of algorithm in some national entity. I believe, and I think, as we all know, that in order to carry out the journalism, social function, and democratic function properly, the mass media must be economically sustained. The mass media must be strong enough as business entity. So the ultimate goal of bargaining codes actually not only how to help media in dealing with digital disruption pressure. The ultimate goal, I think, is how to creating media ecosystem that is conducive for realization of good journalism, civilized media public sphere, and for maintaining the contribution of the mass media to the democratic process in Indonesia in much broader scope. But we believe that to realize the news media bargaining code, also how to build balanced fair system for negotiation with global digital platform, media community in each country cannot walk alone. If we walk alone in this field, we will always facing David versus Goliath struggle between the giant global digital platform. So we must build network, and therefore we need to establish a kind of caucus or alliance of the media association in ASEAN region, and together fulfilling media sustainability principle in this region. This is the idea that we try to offer to all of you, to colleagues from different countries in ASEAN region, because we will be stronger and have better position in bargaining with the giant global digital platform if we establish this kind of caucus or alliance. I think this is the idea that I want to share to you, and hopefully this will be meaningful and useful in this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Agus Sudibyo. The process of the advocacy and the purpose of the ultimate goal together among the ASEAN Journalists Association and Journalist Organization to have this idea to be happen at the end. Pak Dahlan Dahi, time is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can I have my slide? This. Yeah.
Pak Sam.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, selamat siang. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to speak in this forum, but let me introduce myself to understand my perspective. I think this is important. I am CEO of Tribun, which is a media network that have 40 offices across Indonesia, and I work as a journalist, so local journalist as yours. But I am a little lucky that I work as a journalist for almost 30 years now. I work as a journalist 19 years, yeah, in local newspaper. It's okay. So second, I want to put in the context. So Australian News Bargaining Court is about the relation between publisher and platform in business side. So it's about revenue share, which is also important since I believe that media can do the main role as a fourth pillar of democracy when financially, businessly, they are strong. So we have to make the media strong so they become do their role as an important part to build the democracy. But I think it's not enough. Should also look at the how algorithm are impacting our life. Since it's also important, it's not about money, it's not about profit and loss, but it's about the public's prosperity. That would be my point. Can you help me to? Okay. Please run the video. I think the slide says video. It's okay.
Indonesia, negara kepulauan terindah. Beragam suku, bahasa dan cerita unik penuh makna. Warna-warni Indonesia dalam Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. Kami terus tumbuh menjadi mercusuar di negeri 1001 cerita. Kami tahu lebih dalam karena kami dekat dengan sumber cerita. Kami unik sebab kami menghadirkan 1001 cerita lokal untuk Indonesia. Kami adalah representasi keberagaman sudut pandang untuk tetap menjadi Indonesia. Tribun Network.
That's a clip. So, thank you very much. It's the face of Indonesia. It's not the shopping mall, which is the face of Indonesia. It's a traditional market. It's the heart of Indonesia. You can find this perspective if you go deeply to find local perspective. That's why we see Indonesia, which is diverse in ethnicity, culture, and religion. It's a beautiful Indonesia that make Indonesia Indonesia. Next slide. So I think that's summarized about the. Okay, this is Tribun Network. So Nelson from Aceh in the left side. Flight to Papua, I think it took like 5 hours. Yeah, it's the same. You fly from Melbourne to Hong Kong. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's Indonesia. Okay. Okay, we start with local newspaper. 35 years ago. 35 years, I think it's important because media could only sustain if they get trust from the people. If the media become a trusted partner to develop the society. I think that's important things. Second important things that since we employ local journalists and local editor on ground, then we empower local culture from Aceh to Papua. And the most important thing, we preserve local values. I think this is a big thing. How to still have a local character as an Indonesian, at the same time, we consume the global media through our global village. Yeah, I think this is important. So, however, yeah, as if it's happening in media industry. So, who take the control? This one or? Yeah, okay. Look, this is a scheme. I just want to simply explain this. So, wait a minute. Okay. Let's imagine the era of newspaper, where the digital social media and Google are not so powerful like nowadays. Okay. I want to emphasize that journalists works to find and to process information and to publish them to the public. Editor process the news and decide what news, in what angle, for the public. My point is, the editor has the power to decide what public should remember and what should be forgotten. Yeah. Editors are responsible for building a good and healthy society. Fortunately, the editor's immense power is guided by press ethics, press law, and one more thing, local values. It's all ensure the editor works for the public, for democracy, and protect the local values. Okay, and then, this is our word. Next slide. Okay.
Pasam, next slide, please help.
This is our word now, the digital. Look at the red sign. Technology, algorithm. Behind the technology, there is a system. Yeah, we call it algorithm. So, when shifting occurs, the editor extraordinary power pass to algorithm. So now the editor is algorithm. Since 70% of website audience coming from the platform. So actually the editor, the real editor is technology, the real editor is algorithm. The algorithm determines what the public should see and forget. Just same the power with the editor does. The big problem is the algorithm works on a global scale for all ethnic groups and all religions. Global society through algorithm proceed the same direction, forming a unified global village. I discussed with with my friend in a global tech company. I introduced this perspective and he told me, leave algorithm to the user. to their behavior. Since you know, the user, the content, the raw matter, it's a raw material for digital tech company. And it is free. That's Australian news bagian code ask, please pay. This is our raw material. You should pay. It's not free. Yeah, it's a gold. It's a gold mining, okay? But leave algorithm to user, to their behavior, and let algorithm work to provide content and news that are relevant to them, actually consists a big problem. It looks democratic since you have you hand over the power to user, not to the media. But here is at least two problems. One, what if there is human intervention in tech company to remote content? Who control them? This is happen. If the government body or some figure in the political private that's strong, they can ask platform to take out some of content. It's happened also in our world as a publisher. But it's all work in the backstage. Nobody responsible, nobody know. Okay. Second, what if the algorithm which work with the amount and the quality of engagement move in a direction that actually destroys society and civilization? Who control them? That's the point when the editor or when algorithm take over the power of human editors. Next. The contrast is there, not here. So that's algorithm,
Next.
then it's a human editor. Okay? Next, please. Okay. Here is my big question at this forum. Who watch, who control the guys, the men behind algorithm? Since algorithm decide of what public would see and were gotten, who control them? Is Indonesia legislation, Indonesia president, Indonesia parliament, or should Malaysia parliament? Or should United States parliament? Who control these powerful guys? And who know them? Any of you know who is the man behind the algorithm? I want to state my important point. Okay. We don't know exactly who is behind the algorithm, what they believe. What are they fighting for? They fighting for Russia or Ukraine? I don't know. They fighting for Israel or for Palestine? I don't know. They fighting for local people or global citizen? We don't know. Do they believe or they fighting for a diverse world or a one color world? We simply don't know. Next. So, that is my point. Algorithm is the sole custodian of information. It's capable of filtering the truth, capable of divining the truth, and cannot be held accountable for their decision. Who will empower local culture and local values then? Are we going to let the colorful world become only one color? Then, next. Okay. That's why I propose that should be independent, trustee body who take the role to control a logarithm, to make sure they preserve local value, national identity, and democracy. Because we want to pass on a diverse world to our future generation. And hopefully, the algorithm also work in the same direction. I close this presentation with, I think this is the famous quotation. Imagine the power of algorithm. And I think all of us remember the English historian named Lord Acton. Power tend to corrupt. Absolute power corrupt absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Dahlan, for your presentation in terms of making sure that the local value still be there with us, even though the AI taking so much.
It's not about money at all.
Yeah. Well, let's big applause to the speakers here first, and I want to check with the Pak Sam Oliver. Do we still have Professor Roth in the Zoom room? Yes. Pak Roth, Professor Roth, we are finished. We finished with the presentation now, and would like to open the session for comments and question answers. I hope you still with us and willing to take one or two questions from the floor here. And I would like to directly open the floor right now. If there is comment or questions from the floor right now, from the right side, middle side, the left side. Do we have hands up to raise questions? Okay, one from the left side. There is a lady, and then one from the right side. Can the technical officers help with the microphone, please, to make sure that the gentleman and the lady can connect with the audio in the Zoom room? Yes, please, Pak Sam, to the lady here, Ibu Santi, I believe. And then from Malaysia, please, Ibu Santi. Yes.
Thank you for a very comprehensive presentations to all speakers. I have a question to our Australian fellows who are the speakers. Since the regulation or the code is to fight against monopoly, like should be an antitrust government agency who fights it instead of under the press council. But I'm just wondering, in Australia or whatever you found out when we were going to go for bargaining code, is there any where in the world that the press council regulates the body to fight against antitrust?
Okay, I am sure Professor Roth already take that question too. Next, our friend from Malaysia, please help. Thank you. Oh, Ibu Noni, thank you very much for your help. She is our journalist.
Okay, my name is Chamel. I'm from Malaysian Press Institute.
Press Institute.
I've got a question for Nelson Yap. You mentioned that the Australian media earn about 200 million US dollar per year.
AUD, Australian dollar, sorry.
Australian dollar per year. And the things that I want to know, how actually do you distribute the amount among the 24 PIFA members?
200 million.
And also, a question to Prof. Agos. I think you highlighted a very good idea in terms of ASEAN, how ASEAN collectively can negotiate with the technology big company. But do you have the legal framework to do that? For example, Australia has its own code, and Indonesia is, I think, progressing in advance to have that code. We in Malaysia is still, we don't have discussion about creating a code, but maybe after this seminar, we will suggest to the industry and the government as well, so that the code can be put in place and have legal standing, so that Malaysia with a population of 30 million people, Australia has about 26. So we are in the position to negotiate with Google, Facebook, TikTok, and the rest. And I think it is important that, according to Prof. Sims, that designation must be included in the code. Perhaps Prof. Rod Sim can reinforce the point so that we can take home whatever we can take, so that we can have the same maybe legal framework in Malaysia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we still have one from the middle table? No? Okay, for now. Professor Sims, we have questions raised to you. Yeah. Allow me first. One from Miss Santi. She asks you if there is an example or benchmark when a press council taking care of the anti-monopoly object. That's the first thing. And the second thing from our friend of Malaysia, wishing that you can emphasize how the legislation process, that he can also bring that home, learning from your experience as the regulator and the drafter of the bargaining code. Well, maybe 1 or 2 points related to that. Allow me to also address that the question also to Nelson Yap, also from Malaysia, about how to spending the money that you got. But do we have questions from the Zoom meeting? Friends from the Zoom meeting? Can Pak Sam show us? No? Nobody raise hand? Okay. Well, if there is later on, please inform us, Pak Sam. Thank you. So, Professor, time is yours, please.
Okay, can you hear me all right now?
Yes.
Okay, so the Press Council in Australia does not have a role in the code, and really there isn't much role for, well, there's role for two regulators in the code. Our media regulator, called the Australian Communications and Media Authority, it registers media organisations to be eligible to participate in the code, and then it chooses a panel of arbitrators who would arbitrate if called on to do so. The ACCC, the competition regulator, the equivalent in Indonesia is the KPPU, if I remember the initials well enough. We make sure that the companies, the Facebook and Google, comply with the terms of the code. So if they were not to negotiate, if they were not to accept the arbitration, then we could take them to court and there would be huge penalties attached to them. And if they kept not doing it, the penalties would continue and they would ultimately be in contempt of court. So those are the two roles being played by regulators in Australia. The Press Council in Australia does not have a role. As I mentioned earlier, Facebook and Google decided to do deals without being designated to avoid designation. So none of those provisions were ever needed, but the objective was achieved in the sense that deals were done, and the only objective of the code was that deals were done between Google and Facebook on the one hand and media businesses on the other. Now, in terms of the second question about how was the money distributed, it was negotiated by each media company or groups of media companies. So we have 4 large media companies in Australia: the Australian Broadcasting Commission, what's called Nine, another organisation that's called Seven, and then we have News Limited, owned by Rupert Murdoch. So we have 4 main media companies. We have a whole lot of other media companies, some doing regional media, some doing multicultural media, as we talked about earlier, and then The Guardian, and a massive range of small media companies. They all did their own, either they negotiated individually or they negotiated separately, and the money they got came out of those negotiations. So there was never a question of government intervening in determining the amounts or distributing the money. It was up to individual negotiations. If Google and Facebook had not negotiated, they would have been designated under the code, and again, the money would have been determined by negotiation, or if that failed, arbitration by arbitrators who determine how much the Australian Broadcasting Commission got, how much Nine got, how much Murdoch, the News Limited got, and so on. So this was the whole purpose of the code, was to facilitate equal bargaining between Google and Facebook and the news media businesses, and that equal bargaining was brought about by ultimately the right to go to arbitration to get an arbitrated outcome if deals couldn't be negotiated. So it's all about individual deals, not government intervention. I hope that answers at least the main questions, but happy to elaborate if I haven't dealt with everything there. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So the question been answered already. Next, Nelson, do you?
Yes, just regarding that, absolutely. As Rod said, Professor Sim said, the $200 million is a total of all the different amounts that the different media companies, over $200 million, sorry, is a total of all the different companies that have negotiated, or what we believe to be. So in terms of our 24, we can't reveal how much we got because we signed an NDA. And so did the other media companies too. So the $200 million figure is more sort of from what public records suggest. So, but absolutely, it has made a huge difference. I actually said this last night to Chelsea, that, you know, before our industry in Australia was losing journalists. Newsrooms were closing, where we're not having enough, businesses could not employ journalists. But what we've seen now from this $200 million that we have gained for the publishers is that now journalists, we actually don't have enough to employ. There's huge demand for journalists now in our country. So that's created a thriving, media industry again, or sort of helped create that thriving media industry again. And for individual 24 publishers, it means smaller communities, publishers publish, on science, climate change, women's agenda, NGO, all these publications now can focus on the topics that are sometimes not covered by mainstream media. And and I want to emphasize again, I think the importance of sticking together, regardless of our differences, whether you're from a left, center, or right-leaning newspaper, or the borders between Indonesia, Malaysia, etc. It's very important that we all stick together because we can achieve a lot more. Particularly Indonesia is the 3rd largest democracy in the world. if Indonesia can achieve this, it will be tremendous, I think, step forward for everyone, for the global community, to see that the world's third largest democracy has passed a law to sustain and help its news businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Very kind word. Pak Agus, Dr. Agus, please.
Yeah, when we meet with colleagues from UK, AU, and also from Australia, they always talk about the need of networking, the need of work together, dealing with the giant global digital platform. So, and we already discussed this idea with a friend from Cambodia and also from another country when CIG have a general meeting in Bali last year. So, and of course we can share our draft for you. And I think Indonesia and Malaysia is a unique entity in this thing, because we have quite similar language. I think we need, for example, the idea to set up a search engine in Bahasa Melayu like that. So we have unique relation, and I think if we can work together in this context, how to build fair, balanced, and transparent economy, technology, and news relation between publisher and the giant global digital platform is very important. So, because the Google, Facebook is the giant one, the giant. So I think it's also a story, experience from Europe, when Spain and also France try to negotiate with Google, Facebook. They also have similar problem. So I think we need to mainstreaming the idea of bargaining code, publisher right, Digital Economy Act, Digital Business Act, that's still ongoing process in EU now. So what we call in Indonesia is try the domestication of digital platform. How the government in national entity try to create some regulation, new regulation, to domestify, to regulate the digitalization, transformation digital in every single country. So I think because we need more information, we need more discussion about it. I think the idea to establish the caucus or lion of media association across country in ASEAN region is, I think, very contextual and very important. And hopefully we will meet again in this kind of discussion, in this kind of meeting, to try to realize this idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Agus, to respond to the questions. Do we still have question from the Zoom room? Pak Sam? No? Okay. So our friends from Malaysia, Timor-Leste, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Thailand, maybe if you wish to have a more intense discussion, probably we can have 101 later on. But for now, I will open again if in the room there will be another questions by the floor. One. Is Ibu in the back side also want to raise question? No? Oh, just doing, okay. Okay, Pak, please. Pa-
Hi, my name is Neil. I have two
Pak Neil.
questions, one for Nelson and the other one for Pak Dahlan. First, I would like to ask Nelson.
I think the microphone is not, yeah. Can
I think
we move?
My voice is quite loud though.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well,
I don't
it's
need a
Mr.
microphone.
Neil Tobing anyway. Yes. Yeah. Medanese. Please, Vanel. Sorry
Okay,
about this.
my first question goes to Nelson. I'm quite interested with the 200 million plus amount
Everyone is.
that you receive from the platform during the 6 months negotiation, right? It's quite a short period of time that you can get additional 200 million Aussie dollars
Yes.
for the publisher. I just want to know what is the amount, the total amount of the advertising expenditures in Australia, especially from the online. Because
yep.
as Pa Agus mentioned earlier, that here in Indonesia, the revenue sharing ratio is 70%, 70 to 30%. So using that formula, whether that formula also applies to get the 200 million Aussie dollars additional revenue. Okay, and to Pak Dahlan Dahi, I think I have a same opinion with you that this algorithm should be observed, surveilled by the independent body. What do you think the most appropriate body in Indonesia, whether we have to establish a new one or we can use an existing one? Because what I know from the draft submitted by the Cominfo, that I think Santi mentioned earlier that it will be regulated under the Press Council, whether Dewan Pers, I believe, has no authority to regulate a business issues of the publishers. Thank you.
Hi. I in terms of revenue, digital advertising revenue that the digital platforms make in Australia, I just quickly Googled, and Google makes about, I think last year was, up until May 2022 was 1.4 billion Australian dollars, and Facebook was 1 billion Australian dollars. So I am not aware of the sort of digital advertising revenue sharing that is in Australia. I'm not sure how that goes. But in terms of the $200 million that all of the publishers, we all secured across Australia, that is, it comes down to individual negotiations. So it's very difficult to say what each individual publisher or group of publishers, how they negotiated with them to arrive at whatever amount that they did. Obviously, Google and Facebook have their own formula on what they think each publisher should get, and then the publisher would then say, well, actually I disagree or I agree, and then you go back and forth. And so, but there is no specific model, and I suppose if the code is introduced in Indonesia, that's something that the publishers would have to arrive together and formulate something, whether they base it on their company revenue, journalists that they employ, or their website traffic. That's something that they have to work out themselves. But obviously, again, Google and Facebook will have something different to say about that.
Could I just add something? Is that possible?
Yes, of course. Please, Professor.
Yeah, so there is some revenue sharing in Australia. So I think, and I'm relying on my memory here, but I think YouTube shares advertising revenue, which is why they weren't included in the as up for designation. It was just restricted to Google search. The information showing the above $200 million, the ACCC collected that information by just ringing up all the publishers and either getting the information privately on the basis that we wouldn't disclose it, or coming up with a range and getting some understanding. And we put all that together, and that's why we're extremely confident the number is over $200 million. I arrived at that number before the deal that Nelson did, so that only adds to the amount of money, but it was already over 200 million before Nelson's group did their deal, which I applaud them for doing. The only guidance the ACCC gave, so the ACCC was asked to give some guidance, and what I said publicly was that if the platforms only covered 5% of journalists' costs, that would be inadequate. If they covered 50% of journalists' costs, that may be a bit excessive. In the end, the amounts paid were roughly 25% of the costs of employing journalism. So the over $200 million basically covers about 25% of the full costs of employing the journalists who provide the news. Now, that is very rough. It was made up by the ACCC, but at least it was some guidance that was provided, and it turns out that's where the deals largely landed. So I think that guidance was taken account of in coming up with the over $200 million. In everything we knew, with all the information we had, and we had more information than anybody else, we felt $200 million was about the right number. In fact, we exceeded that, and we felt 20 to 25% of the cost of journalism was about right, and we got at the upper end of that 25%. So that was as much science as there was, trying to give as much guidance as we could. So it wasn't so much a percent of revenue, because of course they're getting revenue from a whole lot of sources in a whole lot of different ways. And the amounts that Nelson mentioned were, total advertising across all their platforms, and revenue they get from sponsoring searches and a whole range of other things. So it's tricky to do it that way, but about, as I say, the reference point is about 25% of the cost of the full cost of employing the journalists in each of your organisations. Thanks.
Can I just quickly add to that?
Of course,
yes,
please, Nelson.
Professor Sim's absolutely right. His figure was 200 million was before when our 24 publishers secured our agreement, which, by the way, is thanks to Rod Sims. So thank you very much, Rod. And also the Minderoo Foundation, who helped represent us. So absolutely, it's that $200 million figure was before we signed our deal. So that's a very conservative. You can pretty much say that it was over $200 million worth of deals have been signed. That's per year, by the way. So that's a massive investment for Australian news media companies and in public journalism.
Pak Dahlan, please.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Pak Neil. So it's been a tough question, Pak. So look, Pak, look. The digital world impacting our traditional media in the last 20 years, Pak. So actually the digital technology works in our field without regulation. After 20 years, then we realize we should regulate it. So you can imagine that something bigger than us that should be regulated. So it should be tough. Okay, that's the one point back. Second, I don't know. Neither. Is it in when the discussion about News Australia bargaining court is happening? Do you consider the TikTok as a big player? So when we discuss about this topic, I think we discuss about Google role and Facebook role. But actually, there is in the last 1 year there is a big player also coming. This is TikTok. Which for me, this is important. If you deal with Facebook, Google, and Amazon, and you deal with American culture, but when you deal with TikTok, you deal with the Chinese culture, which is completely different. So I think Indonesia should introduce these one items into consideration when we discuss about publisher rights. Yeah. So, Pak, what kind of body should be control the algorithm? Okay. I think Pak Usman made the very, very good point. Yeah, pasal I think Bu Santi you work in this publisher right. So first, media freedom is priceless for us. Clear, yeah. So how the regulation put their position in these big issues. So the regulation is about economic aspect, not media. I think I agree with that. And regulation is about a platform, not for the media industry. It's okay. It's good, Pak. So how about we give another power to Dewan Pers, yeah, to control this regulation? Since actually, I believe code ethic or our journalist ethics, it is actually ensure the role of journalists to serve the public. That means that if we can use the journalist ethic as the foundation of journalism works, then we can make sure that we preserve the local culture. So the role of Dewan Pers is actually is based on the journalist code. That's my point. But I understand, but this is a massive topic, yeah. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Dahlan. Tricky question actually from Pak Neil, and then another tricky answer from Pak Dahlan, about the position of this institution or this so-called body. It's become a very hot topic to be discussed next, and perhaps this will be also part of the moving forward of the advocacy leading by all these media community, and not only in Jakarta, because it's also encouraging the local media. Pak Nelson, perhaps when you said the experience from your organization, you said independent and local news publishers. So perhaps one explanation about that, because in this room right now, we have not only media owners from Jakarta, but we also have media owners from other provinces across Indonesia. As Pak Dahlan said, from Aceh to Merauke, it's 5 hours flight, like Melbourne to Hong Kong. So please.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Yes, well, as I think I put on the slide before, our 24 publishers reflect the diverse group in Australia. From our group, I think on the list there was Yanchep News, which was a very small newspaper in a regional town. I would say it's about 15,000. So it's a very small regional town. So that's the only paper in town. And then there's Narracourt News as well, which is part of our group. So again, they represent around 15,000, I believe. Now, Narracourt News was actually started after ACM, Australian Community Newspaper, closed down their newsroom in that town. So the owner of Narracourt News realised that there was no local publisher to provide local news anymore to all the people who live in that area. So he started the publication Narracourt News, and then to serve the community. And then we've got also Australian rural and regional newspapers. So again, all of these small regional towns, often they don't have big newspaper presence in their towns. And sometimes when they do get news, the news is very metropolitan orientated. And a lot of people want local news, right? So this sort of funding for the independent / community / small publishers actually not just benefits the publishers, but benefits the small communities that represent. Yeah.
Thank you, Nelson. So we must encourage our local newspapers need to be endorsed and growing. As what Pak Dahlan also said, Tribun also coming from very small and combined to be together as a network. So allow me from the left side, if just one more time to check in the Zoom room, do we have questions? Pak Sam Oliver, do we have? No? Okay. So from the Zoom room, nobody raised questions for the speakers and the panelists, and Professor Roth still with us. But actually, the session allow us to end by 12 noon. But because there is no more questions for now, and perhaps you prefer to have one-on-one dialogue with the speakers here, sometimes shy maybe, yeah? Nelson is very kind to be open with us. We may continue one-on-one dialogue after the session finish. So allow me to invite for closing statements, Professor Sims, will you start your closing statements before we end the seminar this afternoon? And we'll follow with the other panelists. Time is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to echo a bit of what Nelson has said and make the point that it would be wonderful if Indonesia were to have an effective legislation in place to allow payments to media organisations. The second point is that Nelson's organisation was an extraordinary coming together of a lot of newspapers that weren't otherwise affiliated, and that was terrific. But we also had collective bargaining by Country Press Australia. That was an existing newspaper group, so it already had people involved. It had its own few full-time employees, and so they could readily bargain on their behalf. But as Nelson just indicated, many of these in his group and also in Country Press Australia were extremely small. So when you have small media companies, it really is very important that they come together, whether they come together through existing organisations or whether there's government funding to help them to come together. In Nelson's case, it was the Minderoo Foundation, a philanthropic foundation, which was terrific for them to do that. But unless there's an existing media organisation to do the negotiations, then there needs to be some assistance to allow people to be employed to negotiate on their behalf. Finally, in relation to TikTok and Apple News, the ACCC did the work to present the need for the code from 2018 to early 2019. At that time, it was really Google and Facebook that were dominant. In Australia, at least, it's only later that TikTok has become relevant, and of course Apple News as well. So if we were doing the study now, I dare say TikTok and Apple News would be included. I think when the government gets around to reconsidering the code, as I say, it's a new government, has not even been in power for a year now, got many priorities. I suspect when the code is looked at, it will be extended to other companies beyond Google and Facebook. But the key issue, as Nelson has said, and I want to emphasise, is media coming together to call for the code, to call for negotiation, arbitration, to call for the fact that if you do a deal with one company, you do a deal with the lot. The Australian legislation is there to be copied. The Canadians are largely copying it. So the framework is in place. But all media need to come together to call for it. Now, I think from what was said earlier, that's happening. It'd be good to understand more about exactly what's happening, but it sounds like, given what was stated earlier, that you are on track to have legislation put in place. I really hope that's the case, because it will help journalism in Indonesia, help Indonesian democracy, and set a great benchmark for the world. Indonesia is a much larger country than Australia. If Indonesia can do it as well, I think Canada's going to do it. We really then have momentum for this to happen all around the world. So I wish everybody all the best in bringing about legislation to make sure that media is sustained in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you,
And thank you for the
Professor. Big
invitation.
applause to you. Very encouraging word and a kind word towards the Indonesian advocacy team to continue working on the advocacy to have the press regulation. I mean the bargaining code version of the Indonesian version to be happen soon. So very good time for you, Professor, and enjoy your holiday. Really thankful for your time with us. But I think we can let you go now for you to continue your holiday with your family. Thank you very much and have a good evening there in New Zealand. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. All the best.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Agus Sudibyo, allow me to use this opportunity that Professor Rod Sims just mentioned all the best with the work that you have done with your colleagues. But let's say that probably the lesson learned from the Australian, as mentioned by Nelson and Professor Sims, that perhaps it's still become the best moment, the best time for Indonesian to encourage and pushing forward the advocacy, not only with the government side, the minister side, but to make sure how the community come together. So your closing statement on this probably. Thank you.
I think it's depend Pak Nil, Mbak Santi, and Pak Dahlan. Let me speak in bahasa Indonesia because mayoritas ini audiennya berbahasa Indonesia. Jadi saya ingin di akhir ini ngomong bahasa Indonesia. Jadi pada teman-teman pers, pengelola media semuanya, jadi tidak lama lagi insya Allah kalau Bang Nil mengizinkan, kita ini sudah punya regulasi yang mengatur negosiasi antara media massa Indonesia dengan platform global, Google, Facebook, dan lain-lain. Insya Allah ini tidak lama lagi. Ini saya dapat kabar dari ring 1,5 ini, dari istana. Iya, ring 1-nya Bang Nil soalnya, gitu. Jadi yang paling penting sekarang Bapak Ibu pengelola media adalah kita harus mulai belajar bernegosiasi dengan Google dan Facebook. Harus mulai belajar. Kalau kita tidak bisa bernegosiasi, nanti ada regulasinya tapi kita nggak bisa menggunakannya. Gitu. Harus mulai sekarang bernegosiasi dengan Google dan Facebook, teknologinya bagaimana, cara negosiasinya bagaimana, dan seterusnya. Kita harus belajar. Nah, dalam konteks ini, belajar dari Pak Nielsen tadi yang di Australia, untuk media-media lokal dan media-media kecil, lebih baik negosiasinya kolektif, bareng-bareng. Dan untuk itu, asosiasi yang harus berperan. Asosiasi itu bisa SPS, bisa PRSNI, bisa ATVLI, bisa AMSI, JMSI, dan lain-lain. Nah, mereka yang harus membantu anggotanya bagaimana mempersiapkan diri menghadapi keadaan baru di mana media di Indonesia memiliki peluang untuk menuntut Google dan Facebook,
berita yang kalian bikin tuh ada nilainya. Berita kami yang kalian gunakan tuh ada nilainya. Nilainya bagaimana? Mari kita hitung bareng-bareng. Jadi Bapak Ibu sekalian, itu yang sangat penting untuk kita siapkan bersama-sama, yaitu belajar bernegosiasi menghadapi Google, Facebook, dan lain-lain. Itu. Nah, mari ini kita menjadi kesadaran bersama, menjadi persiapan bersama kita. Gitu. Yang terakhir tadi Pak Ketua itu minta saya, Gus, itu acara yang bagus ini kamu harus tutup dengan pantun. Pusing saya, pantunnya kayak apa gitu. Akhirnya saya bikin-bikin ini. Beli toga berbonus roti, pohon kurma berbuah ceri. HPN 23 membangkitkan negeri, Sumatera Utara selalu di hati. Lanjut. Di kota Medan kita beli tasbih. Cukup sekian, terima kasih.
Oh, mau balas. You want to respond it? Oh, our friend from Malaysia.
Ini lokal perspektif.
Oh, from Sabah.
Ya, nama saya Lee Chong dari Sabah, Pulau Borneo. Kita berjiran dengan Nusantara di Kalimantan. Selepas Pak Jokowi umumkan Nusantara di Kaltim itu, saya pusing keliling ke seluruh Kalimantan, Kota Kinabalu.
Pusing itu maksudnya jalan-jalan,
putar-putar,
keliling-keliling, putar-putar.
Putar-putar. Oke.
Round-round.
Kita keliling satu Kalimantan. Dari Sabah, Kota Kinabalu, saya pesawat ke Kuching. Kemudian dari Kuching ke Pontianak, jalan darat ke Singkawang. Di Singkawang rupanya satu tempat yang cukup menarik. Ceweknya cantik belaka. Dari Singkawang kita kembali ke Pontianak, dan dari Pontianak kita ambil pesawat ke Medan. Saya dari Medan, waktu itu jalan daratnya lebih 4 jam ke Samarinda. So daripada Balikpapan ke Samarinda dengan jalan darat 4 jam. Dan dari Samarinda, Pak Gubernur izinkan kami untuk lalu di jalan tol yang baru, belum siap waktu itu. Dan jalannya cuma dalam 60 menit dah daripada Samarinda ke Balikpapan. Langsung daripada Balikpapan saya ke Tarakan dan kembali ke Nunukan. Selepas itu ke Tawau Sabah dan balik ke Kota Kinabalu. Jadi sempena HPN ini kali ketiga saya hadir untuk HPN. Yang pertama di Padang, kemudian di Surabaya. Selang 3 tahun saya tidak kesempatan untuk hadir, tapi Pak Presiden Datuk Mokhtar sering hadir ke setiap HPN di seluruh tempatnya, dan yang terakhir di Sulawesi. Waktu ini kita sangat bertuah sebab diundang agak ramai juga lah, 23 delegasi daripada Malaysia, dan kami sangat berbangga dengan jemputan ini. Jadi Pak Atal berucap tadi dengan pantun, kemudian penutup dengan pantun. Saya tergerak juga untuk mengucap terima kasih dengan pantun spontan yang kita hasilkan inilah. Kota Medan berbukit-bukit, benar ya? Oke, adapun bukit jauh di seberang. Jasa HPN bukan sedikit dari dulu sampai sekarang. Tadi pagi kami breakfast, kebetulan saya makan ubi dan juga pisang lah. Bila nampak pisang itu saya teringat satu pantun Melayu. Pisang emas bawa belayar, masak sebiji di atas peti. Hutang emas sempena HPN boleh dibayar, tapi hutang budi tuan puan di Medan akan dibawa mati. Terima kasih.
So, Pak Agus, Pak Dahlan, and Pak Nelson, I think we just wait and see to be invited from our friend from Malaysia to also involve in their effort to be part of this movement of bargaining code together. Yeah. So your closing statement now, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. I'm very honored. I'm very honored to be here amongst all of you, my colleagues, over 100 colleagues from from Indonesia and the ASEAN nations, Philippines, Thailand, Timor-Leste as well. I'm actually Timorese. So I just want to emphasize again just how important it is for all of us to come together, because as I said, our group of 24 is a representative of what strength looks like when you all come together. And it is going to be a challenge, as Rod pointed out before. There was no sort of professional staff to get us together. I had to do a lot of the work. So I would ring the Greek publisher I knew and I said to him, do you know any publishers who want to be involved? And he said, I'll call you back. And then 2 days later, the Italian and the Jewish newspaper joined. I said, okay. And I ring the Chinese, and then he rings the Indian, and then it kept going and going and going. And this is what you all have to do. There's over 100 of you here today. You go out there and you call 1 or 2 publishers each, and all of a sudden you've got 200-300 publishers who are ready to join in this, collective bargaining. And you'd have to look at collective bargaining, particularly if you're a small, independent or community newspaper. Collective bargaining is the best approach for you to get secure funding from Google and Facebook. And we haven't been approached in Australia yet for the caucus. If you ever thought about it, if you ever create it, I'm sure the Australian associations like ours would participate in the caucus and share our experience negotiating with Google and Facebook, because the best thing I think for not just Australia, not just Indonesia, it would be great if Indonesia passes it, is to see our friends, neighbors and colleagues in Malaysia, in Philippines, in Thailand, Vietnam, all the Timor-Leste, all the countries in ASEAN pass similar legislation, because it's time that media and public interest journalism is supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Nelson. Pak Dahlan,
Karena saya mau bikin pantun, saya bahasa Indonesia saja.
Oke, bahasa Indonesia.
Sebab pantun hanya dimengerti oleh yang mengerti lokal perspektif, Pak. So I think Nelson is hard to understand what is pantun. Yeah, of course, because this is a local heritage, ya. So saya tutup dengan pantun. Media itu saya rasa pekerjaan besarnya bukan membuat berita, Mbak Santi ya. Kita bikin Indonesia Digital Association dan kita menemukan masalah ini. Bukan tentang bikin berita, bukan tentang mengelola media, tapi tentang bersatu. Susah sekali media di Indonesia bersatu. Ya, jadi kita mencintai Medan United, mari bikin Media United. Makasih.
Too quick, too short. I haven't get my drink yet. Oke, cakep pokoknya, cakep ya. So, thank you Pak Dahlan Dahi, Pak Nelson Yap, Pak Agus Sudibyo, and also Pak Rod Sims right now in New Zealand, for all your times and valuable knowledge to be shared with us during the National Press Day celebration today. And of course, we also grateful for your presence here in the room together with us from the beginning up to the end right now. And just to make one short statement to close this, the topic of digital disruption and sustainable media ecosystem governance proposed not only for the current situation, but it will be moving forward together, and there is a proposal from all the speakers and even from the floor, coming from all of you, that we must come together and not only in Jakarta, but also across Aceh until Merauke. And we cross the border because we are global village anyway. Our friends from Thailand, our friends from Malaysia, our friends from Philippines and Timor-Leste and also Myanmar, they also having similar problem. And we map that problem. And the only thing that we can move forward with, the obstacle right now what we have is when we propose to have a one, what Pak Dahlan said before, just now, a united between us. So allow me to close this with the testament. Thank you very much for all your attention, and my apology if there is a mistake in leading and chairing this seminar. I thank you. I give back to the MC. Do we have something proposed? No? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chelsea. Ladies and gentlemen, now we would like to go to the next agenda. It is the token appreciation, and the token appreciation will be presented by the organizing committee by Mrs. Helena Rea from BBC Media Action to the distinguished speakers at the session. Would you please come forward?
It will be moving forward together, and there is a proposal that we must capture global what along. And do we have something proposed?
Ladies and gentlemen, now we would like to go to the next agenda. It is the token appreciation, and the token appreciation will be presented by the organizing committee by Mrs. Helena Rea from BBC Media Action to the distinguished
And sometimes when they do get news, the news is very
Alphabet, Google's parent, and the chief executive of Facebook.
News, right? We as journalists,
You work in this
independent / community / small publishers, actually not just benefits the publishers, but benefits the small communities that represent. Yeah,